Well, for many of their PJ sets, they use viscose cotton sateen.
Okay.
Now, what that actually is, it's a blended moisture-wicking fabric that's ideal for menopausal women.
A solution to the shortage of menopause treatment patches is now on its way, with Pharmac deciding to fund an estrogen gel.
So what is menopause coaching? What we've demonstrated with our specialist menopause coaching programme over the last 10 years is that in just 7 weeks, we can short circuit what many people are taking years to get the right help and support with.
Menopause coaches, pyjamas, gels and health supplements. Welcome to the Menoverse.
It's a real marketing opportunity now. There's a huge gold rush of menopause products out there being marketed at women. If you can slap menopause on something, then, you can charge a premium for it and probably people are going to buy it.
I'm Sharon Brett Kelly and tomorrow is World Menopause Day, marking that point in time 12 months after a woman's last period. The ages, stages, signs and side effects are many and varied. But we're talking about many millions of women around the world, and the symptoms can be debilitating.
The anxiety, the weight gain, body pains,
forgetfulness,
your voice becomes shaky,
heart palpitations, phantom smells.
I'm seeing things that I don't think other people are seeing, and it is like slight hallucination.
Difficulty concentrating, dizzy spells, bloating, stress incontinence, brittle nails.
Mood changes. 1 in 3 women will get either anxiety or depression.
Boy, isn't it a treat being a middle-aged woman.
Today on The Detail, I'm with writer and menopause expert Nikki Bezant to talk about the flourishing meno industry, good and bad, the controversy over a documentary that puts a menopause guru in a bad light, and why we're behind others, including Australia, on menopause in the workplace.
A Senate committee report is calling for a major shake-up of how workplaces and doctors deal with women suffering the symptoms of menopause. It's suggesting the federal government consider introducing so-called reproductive leave for women needing time off because of sleepless nights and hot flushes.
But first, here's Nikki on why we even need a World Menopause Day.
Well, I think it will be great when we don't need it. But for now, we do need to keep talking about menopause. I mean, for me, every day is World Menopause Day these days. But actually, it's good to have a focus for attention on this life stage, because there has been decades or, really generations of silence about it. So we're starting to talk about it now, and I feel like this can only be a good thing.
Interesting. I looked it up, World Menopause Day, and there's a little snippet from the International Menopause Society, the white paper that I guess is being presented on that day. And it says, after many years of neglect, we have finally seen long overdue, unprecedented attention given to menopause. So do you see that as the main aim, to raise awareness?
I guess it is really, yeah. I mean, we have seen just in the last few years a whole lot more conversation and, as that paper says, attention on menopause and information and education getting out there too. So this is it's continuing that story really.
What's your main concern at the moment when it comes to menopause and treatment and discussion about it?
I'm interested in what we're seeing now out there in the menopause universe, and I am immersed in it because, I'm on menopause Instagram and, I'm surrounded by content on menopause. And what I find interesting is that I'm seeing what I also saw in my decades of writing about health and nutrition, which is that there is a whole lot of information now out there of varying levels of quality and accuracy. It seems to have really, really accelerated. There's everyone's jumping onto menopause, which is a good thing, right? It's good that there's lots of conversation about menopause, but it can mean that there's also less than credible information, people giving advice who aren't really qualified to give advice, misinformation. There's a lot of stuff that's potentially quite confusing for women. So it's almost like it's not information overload, because we need lots of information, and it's really important for women to be able to draw from, wherever they want to help themselves and empower themselves. But it's also concerning that we've got this kind of conflicting advice out there, I guess, very much like we see in the world of nutrition and healthy eating, which is kind of not surprising to me, but also in a way, it's really ramped up very quickly.
Well, let's look at this BBC Panorama investigation, because there seems to be a lot of controversy around that. Maybe you could explain it to me, Nikki, since you've seen it and you understand it better.
It's BBC Panorama, which is a documentary series. They do episodes on different things every week, and there's been a whole lot of uproar in the menoverse, I guess you could say, about this in the UK because, well, first of all, it was looking at a lot of the products that are marketed to menopausal women, which is what I've been talking about. So there's a whole lot of stuff that's really got very little, if any, evidence behind it. And so they did actually look at that, which it's not the thing that's causing the controversy, but that was part of it, which was raising a very valid point. A lot of the stuff that is marketed at women in this life stage doesn't have very good, if any, evidence behind it, and some of it is just exploitative. So there was that. But then the thing that has got people up in arms is that they took aim at one of the very popular menopause doctors in the UK, Louise Newson, who has, admittedly, she's done a lot of work raising awareness around menopause, and she's very prominent in the media in the UK and on social media, so women here would definitely know who she is. And they looked at some of her former patients who have been prescribed HRT at levels above what is approved or recommended, and the complications that those women had. And it was sort of discussing that whole issue. The reaction to that on social media in particular has been, in my opinion, far out of proportion to what the show was actually saying.
You might be feeling quite a lot of things right now. You might be quite confused. You might be quite scared about your health.
I am all for scientific-based evidence on things. Despite the fact that they're talking about high doses of HRT, I think the fact that they're talking about HRT and they're talking about cancer at the same time is just going to cause so much scaremongering. God, I do feel upset about that.
So the programme spoke about supplements that are claiming to alleviate menopausal symptoms, and then the Panorama team are actually coming back saying, well, there's not actually enough scientific evidence to back that up. That's where Panorama for me have missed the trick. I want another programme that goes back into the research and the funding of female health in this country, because it's time to make changes.
It was really talking about exceptional prescription, like the prescribing of HRT at levels that are not really recommended for every woman. And it was raising concerns about that. And they were valid concerns, I think.
I explained about the anxiety and how things were, and she doubled the HRT prescription then. I thought, well, okay, she's saying take more. So I took more.
After that, how did you feel?
Things got really, really, really bad. I was physically angry. I couldn't sleep. So I started drinking in order to try to get me to sleep. I had to move out because of the arguments.
And they certainly had some experts on there who were suggesting that that was of concern. But I think that the menoverse doesn't like their hero, Louise Newson, being attacked in that way.
Please don't be put off looking into HRT and the Newson Clinic by what you've seen in Panorama, because lives have been saved. You know, I'm not the only one who feels like this, and I'm not the only one who genuinely feels that certainly their quality of life, if not their life, has been saved by HRT.
She's interesting though, and I think you've interviewed her, haven't you, Nikki, or you've met her?
Yes, I met her last year when we were both at a women's mental health conference in Melbourne where she was sort of the guest of honour and I was also speaking. And I interviewed her for about an hour, which was really interesting just to get her perspective on a bunch of different things. So she is, for sure, I have no doubt that she is a passionate advocate for women's health, and she has really done a lot of good work in terms of helping women understand menopause and feel a bit more empowered about, their experience of this life stage. She is also in private practice, so she makes money from prescribing women or treating women in menopause, and that's, fair enough. That's her business. She is a sort of a little bit of a maverick in the sense that she is doing her own thing in terms of treatment, and sometimes that is outside of the guidelines of organisations like the International Menopause Society, for example, and the British Menopause Society as well, who have some issues with her, and they've actually removed her from their register of approved doctors. So there's some controversy around her. Yeah.
I'm reading a response from the BBC's complaint department that says, because this has been so controversial, and I think because there's been so many complaints about the actual documentary, it says that England's health watchdog, the Care Quality Commission, is looking into information of concern at clinics run by Dr. Louise Newson, and adds that she has lost her British Menopause Society accreditation over the prescribing of high doses of HRT. I guess we're looking at this from a distance, but is this something that New Zealand women need to look out for?
I'm not aware of women in New Zealand being prescribed estrogen. This is what this was about, the estrogen patches at those really high levels. I mean, it might happen in some circumstances, and certainly if you talk to the experts in this area, they will sometimes prescribe above that highest maximum dose in very specific circumstances. But I don't think it's something that's being done routinely here. And I would say that it's not a problem that I've come across for women in New Zealand. It would be something to keep an eye out for, like the answer to every issue in menopause is not just increasing your dose of HRT. There are other things to look at, but I don't think we have too much of an issue with it here.
Should we go a little bit into HRT? Because, I mean, you and I know what it is. The thing that's been in the news over, months, possibly even more than a year, is the shortage of HRT patches.
Thousands of women have responded to a survey on the impact of the shortage of hormone therapy patches as pharmacists and doctors call for better communication from Pharmac. A global shortage of HRT patches has hit New Zealand hard, with many women having to shop around different pharmacies or cut down on patch use to make them last longer.
Can you explain what they are, Nikki?
The patches are estrogen, estradiol in particular, which is a type of estrogen, and they deliver estrogen through the skin. So it's a little patch that you put on your body, on your abdomen usually, and it delivers estrogen transdermally through the skin. That's the sort of gold standard best treatment or best way of getting estrogen in HRT, and estrogen is part of HRT. If you have a uterus, then you also need to take a progestogen. So for most women, that's a progesterone pill, or it can also be in the form of an IUD with giving you progesterone, and the progesterone protects the uterus from the effect of the unopposed estrogen. So basically, it's a way of getting your estrogen through a patch.
And it's a global shortage of the patches.
Yeah, it's complicated. And, I've written about this and talked about this a lot. It's been going on for more than a year, and it will likely continue into next year. There's supply chain issues. There is a global increase in demand, which I still find it astonishing to believe that the, international drug companies who make these things somehow failed to anticipate the increase in demand for HRT. With all of their research and development ability, they haven't cottoned on to the fact that there are more women coming through who might like to have estrogen patches. So It's a global issue. And there's also a local issue with Pharmac, until very recently not funding very many options for women. And so all of the demand was on a very few products. So, it's a complicated mess, and it all boils down to a lot more work and a lot more stress for women when they're already stressed with menopause.
Yeah, so what happens, the people I've talked to and my own experience is that, say if you're prescribed patches, often you don't get the patches at the amount that you're prescribed. So you might get a larger patch which you have to cut in half, which kind of seems a sort of outrageous in a way, isn't it? That you can't be prescribed the exact size of the prescription that you're given.
No, or you might just be given 2 weeks supply at once, and then you've got to go back 2 weeks later. There's all these kinds of things going on just because of the intermittent shortage that's happening. Last time I went to get mine, I got the patches that I was prescribed, and I was so excited. I mean, isn't that ridiculous? I was so excited to get the patches that I'd actually been prescribed in a month's supply. It was like, wow, what a treat.
Yeah.
But this is a ridiculous situation that we are in. It is women having to shop around different pharmacies, women having to go without sometimes even.
So some women are having to go without.
That has definitely been happening, yeah. A few months ago, that happened to me. I went to my pharmacy for my repeat, not even with a new prescription, but for a repeat prescription, and they just said, look, no, we've got none. So then I had to go back to my GP, get a different prescription for actually oral estrogen, which is not the preferred option, but is an option. And I took that for a while until patches were available again, because I couldn't be bothered going around 6 different pharmacies to see if they had patches. But women are doing that as well. So it's a lot more effort and work putting on women. And it speaks to, I think, big picture, how women's health in general has not been valued or particularly focused on for many years.
Yeah, and until recently, Pharmac was only subsidising a restricted amount of HRT, different products. Has that changed?
They have recently announced that they have approved the estrogen or estradiol gel, transdermal gel, which is an alternative to patches.
A solution to the shortage of menopause treatment patches is now on its way, with Pharmac deciding to fund an estrogen gel. It's been called a huge win for women in New Zealand, with the gel to be fully funded from the 1st of November.
So this is really good news because that's another product that we can use instead of a patch, which should hopefully take some pressure off the demand for patches. If women can switch to gel, then that's, another option. And they keep funding different brands of patches now, so to sort of try and fill the gaps a little bit. I noticed that they've just funded another brand that I haven't heard of patches just recently. So that there's alternative brands. They were at one point only funding 1 or 2 different brands. So that's happened, and that's a good thing. The gel being funded is a good thing.
And is there any sign that this shortage, this global shortage, is going to go away, i.e. that all women in menopause who need some kind of treatment can actually get what they need?
Well, that's a bigger question. I mean, the patch shortage is one thing, but then the wider issue is access to treatment, what that means. And that means actually access to up-to-date treatment at GP level, at doctor level, and, access to the range of advice and care that we need for menopause. And that is definitely getting better. I mean, the knowledge and education amongst doctors is getting better, but we've still got a way to go there as well, I think.
You have become a menopause expert, whether you like it or not. What do you say to women who come to you for advice about how they deal with symptoms relating to menopause?
Well, I've written 2 whole books about this, so there's a lot to say. It's not just one thing, right? It's a whole lot of different things. It's not just HRT. And I think that we can fall into the trap of thinking that HRT is a magical solution to everything, which it is not. It's definitely a game changer for a lot of women, and it can really help. It can be life-changing, life-saving medication even for some women who are really struggling in menopause. But if I just took HRT and didn't pay attention to exercising regularly, looking at what I eat, keeping a handle on my stress and really focusing on my sleep, all of those things are all part of the picture as well. So there's a whole lot of stuff around looking after our whole health that all contribute to helping us to feel better in menopause and beyond.
Menopause in the workplace, that seems to be one area that's really developing, the recognition that women going through menopause, I guess, need to be taken seriously.
Yeah, it has really, really exploded. And in terms of, the work that I do, it's really, really gratifying to see organisations starting to take this seriously. It's part of women's health, of course, and well-being. It's also part of diversity, equity and inclusion. And if we think about women at work, when you're hitting your perimenopause and menopause years, you are hitting also the peak of your career usually. And if menopause derails that, then we have a problem, not just for the women, but for the organisations and for the economy, big picture, and the country. We need to be supporting women through this stage because it's a temporary life stage. Remember, it's not a permanent situation. It's just a temporary life stage where they might need some extra support. So if we can do that for women at work, it can make a really, really big difference. And it's also good for organisations. It's good for them to help them attract women into businesses. and to show that they're supporting those women.
So what kind of support are these good workplaces doing?
There's all kinds of stuff, really, and it really depends on the workplace and it depends on the kind of situations that women are in and the environments that they're in. You know, what a woman who's working at Auckland Airport might need is very different from someone who's working in a law firm, you know, but a lot of it can be around talking to the women and asking them what they need. It can be as practical as uniforms, you know, adapting uniforms to suit changing and fluctuating body temperatures, or it can be things like flexible working or menopause leave. You know, there's a lot of stuff that's happening around the world in this space now.
And how does New Zealand sit compared with the rest of the world in all of this?
Our organisations are doing really well. You know, there's a lot of interest in education in the workplace, the things that I do and others like me. And we probably do still have a way to go. I mean, there's just been a big inquiry in Australia, Senate inquiry in Australia into menopause.
It's made 25 recommendations, including a call to change the Fair Work Act to ensure women can have some flexibility during menopause.
You know, there's a whole lot of recommendations in that Senate report around awareness campaigns of menopause, thinking about policies around menopause leave, education for doctors, ongoing education, you know, in the medical system, all kinds of things that they're recommending, which we have not dealt with here in New Zealand yet. And there's kind of very little appetite at government level, it seems, for anything around menopause at this stage.
Is that right? I mean, have you made approaches to the government?
Not me personally, but there was a petition last year that was presented around menopause, and we had a women's health strategy too that came into being just before the end of the last government. And where that's at now seems to be a little bit up in the air. I have tried to get some information out of Te Whatu Ora about it. It's kind of been absorbed into wider goals in the health system, it seems, and the menopause stuff it's just disappeared.
That's it for today. The Detail is a newsroom production supported by RNZ and NZ On Air. Thank you to Nikki Bezant. This episode was engineered by Ben Pearce and produced by Gwen McClure and Davina Zimmer. I'm Sharon Brett Kelly. Mā te wā.